Well, hi, everybody. I'm Robert, and I'm the founder of Shameless Care, and I'm here today with Dr. Stoehr.
Hey friends, Dr. Stoehr here. How you doing?
And so we're going to talk about STI testing, and this video is really to prepare you for when you have an appointment with your in-person physician and you're going to go get tested. So with that in mind, what are things that people should know before they go to the doctor's office?
A couple of things to know. I joke around with my patients, but I'm serious about it. There's two people you should never lie to, your lawyer and your doctor. So if your doctor is unaware that you are in an alternate sexual lifestyle, you're a swinger, that you're having sex with more than just your spouse, it's important for them to know that. They may not know what to do with it, and that's okay. That's one of the reasons that Robert and I do these videos is to make sure that your doctor is aware and knows what to do with the fact that you are in an alternative lifestyle.
And now I'm not a physician, you obviously are, but I've often thought that if you walk into the doctor's office and you have a specific problem, like, doctor, I hooked up with someone new last week and now it hurts when I urinate and I have some discharge. Like that's probably pretty easy to figure out potentially. But I dare say if you walk into a doctor's office and say, test me for everything, that is a far different situation and there's a lot of potential outcomes to that. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. So test me for everything is a really vague statement. So if you walked into any gynecologist office, in fact, if you went into 10 different gynecologist offices and said, I want to be tested for all the STDs, you would get 10 different panels, most likely. Everybody would have a different opinion as to what should and should not be tested. There's lots of different reasons for that. Some of it's guidance from the professional bodies. Those professional guidances are typically for patients who are not in high risk sexual lifestyles. Those guidances are for general population. You also get a little bit of the biases of the providers themselves, and they may or may not test you for certain things based on their own personal biases. It may also be the laboratory availability and what they can and cannot run. So, if you're wanting and needing specific tests, you really need to tell the doctor what it is that you're wanting. I actually have a group of patients now that keep coming in and saying, hey, I want a 10 panel STI check. And I'm like, a 10 panel STI check is not a definitive medical term. I know what they're talking about because my husband and I are alternative sexual lifestyle. But if you said that to another gynecologist, they'd be like, okay, I'll pick out the 10 things I think are most important and we'll run those. It may not be the correct things to be running for somebody who's high risk.
Yeah, I've seen that exact same thing on Reddit when people are talking about STI tests. And instead of talking about infections, they'll say, well, this company offers 8 panels, this company offers 10 panels. And yeah, it means absolutely nothing. So, what are the things that you think, a physician is just automatically going to test you for? What would be the consistencies? And then what would be the things that you feel like someone who's non-monogamous should get tested for, but that physician may not be aware of?
Yeah, so I would say what most gynecologists and probably primary care docs are going to test for if you say, hey, I want to be tested for STDs. They're going to test you for vaginal or urethral in a male, gonorrhea, chlamydia, trichomonas. They'll probably test you for HIV, hepatitis, and syphilis. Those are going to be your most common ones that garden variety docs will say, okay, these are the ones that we should be testing for. Now, if you're in a non-traditional sexual lifestyle, you should be tested for oral and vaginal or urethral gonorrhea, chlamydia, trichomonas. You should be tested for HIV, hepatitis, not just hepatitis C, but probably hepatitis A as well, and then also for HSV. Now, HSV is a little debatable. This is one of the things that the CDC recommendations and the population data and whatnot is a little bit murky on. The CDC actually says not to test for HSV2 in garden variety populations because there is a false positive rate. The fact is, in a high risk population, you pretty much negate the false positive rate because of the high prevalence. So, if I'm getting into a bunch of terminology that's a little too convoluted, let me know. But the higher the likelihood of the rate of the virus in the population, the less likely to get a false positive. So, in a high risk population, you need to be doing gonorrhea, chlamydia, trichomonas in both the mouth and whatever genital you have, HIV, hepatitis, syphilis, and herpes.
Okay.
The other ones that are debatable, a little bit more debatable, ureaplasma and mycoplasma. They're both not considered per the literature to be STIs, but they behave like STIs. So, they usually those are either in the urine or in the genitals. More common to be found in females than in males, partially because there's a better environment for growth there. So ureaplasma and mycoplasma aren't technically STIs, but they very much behave like them. Mycoplasma is more leaning towards an STI than ureaplasma is. So if I have a patient that's at all symptomatic and we don't find anything else, they get screened for that next.
Mhm. Yeah, that's super interesting. So, how do you think the average physician might feel if a patient walks in and says, "I want to be tested for these things," and just hands them, a list?
They'll probably say, you know what, it's probably not necessary to be tested for all that stuff. If you come in and say, hey, look, I'm high risk for sexually transmitted infections. My husband and I are swingers. These are the tests that are recommended by a physician online who specializes in this. This is her name. This is her degree. You can look her up and then hands them a sheet of paper. You're in much better stead,
Great. Well, we're going to create that sheet of paper and put it on the website.
as we should. Yes.
Now, one of the things that occurs to me as I talk to people in the lifestyle, from across the country, is that people often hyper focus on HIV. And I'm not suggesting that HIV isn't important, it is. But people often take this approach of, I'm going to use a condom and protect myself from HIV. And then they don't really so much worry about these bacterial STIs. I'm sure they would if one blew up and suddenly they were in pain. But it's actually really interesting. According to the CDC, having a bacterial STI more than doubles and almost triples your likelihood of contracting HIV. Of course, if you are having sex with an HIV positive person, is the caveat there. But that's one of the reasons why I think all of those things are really important. And then just the human decency of, hey, if your hobby involves putting other people's genitals in your mouth, and I'm as guilty of that as anybody, then you just have a moral responsibility if you're going to bother to get STI tested, in my opinion, to try to get STI tested really thoroughly. And hopefully this resource really helps people out.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That is one of the things that I try and remember to tell my patients. I'm guilty sometimes of forgetting to be like, look, if you've got gonorrhea and you have sex with somebody with HIV, you are in bad stead, my dear. Your chances of catching that have more than tripled. Gonorrhea is specifically the one that's particularly well documented in the literature to increase your risk for HIV. I will say the prevalence of HIV, thank God, is fairly low, but different areas of the country, syphilis is exploding in the state of Texas. It has been for a couple of years and it is bad right now. We've also had just recently a fairly large gonorrhea outbreak in the lifestyle community in our area. So yeah, you have to protect yourself and protect other people by getting tested regularly.
Right. And I can tell you that at Shameless Care, if now everyone that we test at Shameless Care is asymptomatic, so keep that in mind because I think
Mhm.
that gonorrhea is often more symptomatic in the genitals than it is in the throat. So our data set's a little bit skewed, but nonetheless, had we only tested the genitals in the way that most other online companies do, and the way that I think most physicians probably default to, we would have missed about half of our positive gonorrhea cases. And those people would have went ahead and spread that in their community. So throat swab testing, I think, is definitely absolutely key. So with that in mind, I know we're going to shoot another video that has this information as well. But if someone is in their physician's office, which has happened to me more than once, and that doctor is unsure how to do the throat swab test and so therefore doesn't want to do it, what can people tell their doctor in that case?
Okay, so it's really easy. If number one, to tell your doctor, hey, look, the gynecologist online says this is easy. You use an Aptimus swab, and I will show you. I actually brought one home with me so you can see what it is. It's the orange swab for those in the doctor's office, an Aptimus swab, and you do it just like you would do a swab for strep throat, exactly the same way.
Okay. And I know there's some different, health software systems out there, but generally speaking, is coding it a snap when people are putting this test into their computer?
It is exactly the same coding as you would use to test for gonorrhea, chlamydia, and trichomonas in the vagina or the penis. Sorry, the gynecologist in me is like, what's that organ that the males have?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exactly the same coding. It's just when you put the order in, you need to make sure that you put the route or the location as being oral. And you can order both of them at the same time, order one for oral and then one for the genitals, absolutely. I will say I might be guilty in my office of using the same swab. I swab their mouth first, I swab their genitals next, because it doesn't frankly matter where the infection is, you treat it the same way. And so if you're wanting to reduce the cost to the patient, you can swab the mouth, swab the vagina, and then send that off together and just put it as vaginal. But technically, if you're doing it the correct way, you should do two separate swabs.
Okay, excellent. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Not at this point.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much.
For sure, absolutely, anytime.